We need to start from the beginning first. We start back in 1983 on Atari's 8-bit computers. Written by John Howard Palevich is this little game called Dandy. It's a 4-player co-op maze dungeon crawler game where you traverse room after room, collecting treasure and clearing rooms of monsters with your bow and arrow. If this seems familiar to another game that is, in the title of this video, we're getting to it. It's really funny, I swear. Dandy sold well enough for it to garner some real interest, I assume, since I can't actually find any concrete sales figures for the game, and caught the eye of video game designer Ed Logg, who took Dandy as an inspiration to create Oh yes! Gauntlet, the classic 1985 arcade 4-player maze dungeon crawler game where you traverse room after room, collecting treasure and clearing rooms of monsters. Wait a minute, this sounds really familiar. So Palevich actually threatened Atari with legal action due to the massive similarities between Gauntlet and Dandy, and as the legend goes, the suit was handled out of court. But right, Gauntlet. This improved on the rather basic game loop of Dandy. It includes 99 more levels than Dandy had, which I feel was intentional, 4 playable characters each with different stats and playstyles, screen-clearing bombs in the form of magic potions, and permanent upgrades players can obtain such as extra armor, movement speed, and shot speed to name a few. Gauntlet also has like a billion revisions, and a few years later they made a sequel, Gauntlet 2, a lot harder than the previous version, where an internal rank value counts up based on your score. The higher your score gets, the less healing items appear, eventually starving you out around the 300k mark. Note that later versions of Gauntlet 1 also had this mechanic, but not the early revisions. In terms of gameplay, Gauntlet 2 isn't really much different compared to Gauntlet 1. There are a few new enemies, some new floor tiles, and 102 stages for players to traverse, but it's really more of the same. Sispri Gauntlet is a doujin game released by D5 in 2007, based off of the Sister Princess anime and VN series, and as the name would suggest, combines this IP with Gauntlet. But while that would make a pretty neat game on its own, that wasn't enough for D5, so they made it a bullet hell shmup. D5 combines the dungeon crawling of Gauntlet, the aesthetic of Sister Princess, and the mechanics of games like Cyvaria to combine a truly addicting and satisfying game. Gaining XP from kills, shot damage and grazing to level up, to then get iframes, to then use your chain reaction bomb to then level up more and get more iframes to get more score and power up your main shot over time. It's all really good stuff, and it completely targets your dopamine receptors to having a good time. So where can you get Sispri? Is it on Steam? Nope. On D5's website, you can obtain the game completely for free. It does say not freeware, but as far as my understanding goes, D5 is completely defunct and there's no way to contact this group or properly purchase this game normally. I guess this would be considered abandonware at this point, as the final game was released on disc in 2007 and then uploaded here in 2013. So now that you have the game, you can just pick a character and start playing. You have 3 buttons and 8 directions to move. Button 1 is your shot, button 2 is to lock your aiming, and button 3 is to swap characters when you get more. Your goal is simple though, reach the exit before you die, and you'll progress to the next stage. No continues here though, you have to learn the game to get further in it. You'll also see a health bar at the top showing you can take multiple hits before dying, an XP bar that shows you can level up, and a score counter. Now that we've covered the most absolute basics and you know where to get the game, let's continue on. Stage 1 is a perfect example of what Sispri Gauntlet is as a game, so let's use it as a basis for the rest of this segment. Start it with Karen walking towards you, which might be a little strange if you also picked Karen. And 4 hearts with wings and a crown. These are enemy spawners. They will continuously spawn a specific type of enemy until they're destroyed. As Karen approaches you menacingly, she will stop, right before firing a burst of bullets in the direction she is aiming to. If your neurons have activated, you might try grazing this burst of bullets and you'll level up. When you level up, you get invincibility, which will allow you to continue grazing the burst of bullets. Due to good game design, you're able to graze bullets multiple times in this game, resulting in more level ups and higher scoring potential. You must be thinking right now,
well, can't I just sit here and graze a Karen forever?
Again, due to good game design, Karen will run out of ammo after 3 shots and will no longer be useful to us, so she can now perish. Progressing through the starting area, you'll see the game introduce you to barriers that you can use for cover, and more Karens that appear, which incentivizes you to group them together to get loads of XP. Taking the road north will show a gate saying Promised Island, revealing a large open area of the stage. In the middle of this field is a large robot. This robot is also surrounded by sisters, ready to be blasted by your shot. Heading right after killing the large robot, we encounter enemies with lasers, more Karens, and a splitting path. Taking the path down reveals a secret. A full health item awaits us to heal us after a big battle in the courtyard. Hold on now, you're having a fucking brain blast. If there's something to the right, there must be something to the left. You march over there, taking care of the Karens and lasers that await you, to see a small alcove with a path going into it. Taking this path is an ambush of enemies. Take your time after just getting re-healed, and you notice her, an Extend sister. You grab her after wiping out the room, and you can swap to her at any time now with the 3rd button. Wonderful. Leaving the area, your eye is pointing towards this small pocket to the left. Now, you just have this hunch. Maybe there's something here? You start shooting around and you start hitting an invisible item. After enough punishment, it's an hourglass. Extra time is nice, and you carry back to the right side of the courtyard and go north, entering the backyard with a pool. The paths split here again. Knowing what you learned before about secrets, you go to the top right and push through the trees, revealing an option to you. You grab it and wipe out the pool grounds before progressing left. Two more Karens and a weird pillar. Convert time into XP? Well, you touch it and your timer then runs to 0, spawning red Yakuza enemies that are after your ass. You panic and run to the left, the final area. This one is just hordes of enemies and spawners, and you don't really have the firepower to deal with it. In your panic, you start mashing the shot button, and a super-powered attack comes out with a score multiplier visible, clearing the room and letting you finish the stage. So just in stage 1, we're introduced naturally to the main game loop, gaining XP to level up, and its scoring system. We're introduced to the main enemy types of the game, concept of secrets, and exploring, extends, healing, permanent options, as well as our EX attack and the importance of the timer. Every single stage in Sispri Gauntlet is like this, ripe and full of secrets to uncover. Designed so tightly, so cleanly, it reminds me of the genius mapping of older FPS games, leading you and teaching you through its visual design and enemy placement. And what if I told you that there are 18 unique stages like this in Sispri Gauntlet? Before we move on, that EX attack that I mentioned was that super powered attack we saw in the end of the stage. This is your best tool in the game. Every character has their own EX attack that functions differently, with varying levels of effectiveness. Because of how important the EX attack is, I'm covering it now before we continue. Under your HP bar at the top left of the screen, you'll see a blue meter and text saying EX attack OK. When this is true, go beside an enemy and tap a direction and shot at the same time. This will cause you to perform an EX attack. This will then have a cooldown for a short while before giving you a Gigawing OK soundbite to let you know when it's recharged. Enemies killed by this EX attack will spawn more bullets to kill more enemies, creating a massive chain reaction and giving you room to breathe. I'll be covering this in full detail soon when we cover every character in the game. There is also a power shot or focus shot mechanic that you can use by tapping up and down or left and right, depending on your current facing direction. This will change your shot in a way that's unique to all characters. For some, this is an extremely powerful attack, and for others, useless. I said before that there are 18 unique stages in Sispri Gauntlet, and while this is true, you don't encounter every stage in a single run. Rather, many stages will end in a splitting path that takes you to a different route. The max amount of stages you can encounter in one run is 13, assuming that you take every secret exit. On screen, and will also be provided in the description, is a visual representation of the stage map in the game. As you can see, after stage 1, we'll go into stage 2, where the paths will split to stage 3 and 4. 3 will split into stage 5 and 6, whereas 4 splits into 13 and 5, and so on and so forth, culminating in the two final stages, stage 20 and stage 9. Those with a keen eye also notice that certain stages will give certain rewards as secrets. In stage 1 we have Haruka and an option. But what are these potions that are under some of these stages? These are perma potions similar to the ones in Gauntlet. We have extra armor, shot speed, move speed, shot power, and fight power. These are picked up by whichever character you're currently controlling and can stack up to 3. You may notice that certain stage paths also contain certain special items, so it can be useful to look at this map and plan what sort of route you want to take. I think this covers the basics of the game. Run, shoot, and explore. 3 things that combine together to make a wonderful experience like no other.
It wouldn't be a shmup without scoring.
Scoring in Sispri Gauntlet is simple, but it requires a lot of planning to truly maximize your earning potential. Your main tool is the EX attack mentioned before. Every enemy you kill with it will increase the current chain's multiplier to a maximum of times 20, and it lasts until the chain is over, which means a great scoring method is to completely fill the room with enemies and use an EX attack and just fucking obliterate the whole room for millions of points. However, there's further optimization you can do here. The things that spawn enemy spawners have huge base values, so killing them with a times 20 chain will nail you a lot of score. So what you can do is damage the enemy spawner enough so that the residuals of your EX attack chain do enough damage to finish off the robot for a big boost in score. Next is grazing. Of course grazing gives score, why wouldn't it? Not only is grazing a great source of experience, especially those blue flame bullets, every graze you do earns you 500 points. A small amount, but it adds up over time. Lastly is the clear bonus. You get score from amount of enemies killed and bullets grazed. Just a tiny little boost at the end of a stage. So while Sispri Gauntlet doesn't have a lot of complex mechanics, the ones it has are designed to work in any situation, in any map. Taking advantage of the large enemy hordes to earn massive score is just satisfying to do. Is there a reason to score? Not really. You don't earn extends, but it's merely bragging rights and the satisfaction of seeing the entire screen explode in bullets and sound effects while your score races up. As mentioned before, there are 10 characters to choose from in Sispri, all of which having different shots, EX attacks, and strengths and weaknesses. Let's start with the default selection, Karen. Karen is a standard wide shot character with good move speed. As she levels up, her wide shot gets more and more dense as time goes on. Her EX attack is a forward sweep of a sword that creates an octagonal spread when it kills an enemy. Her focus shot, on the other hand, is very strong, focusing all of her spread into a straight shot that melts large enemies quite quickly. Haruka is a melee focused character that is rather weak. As she levels up, her sword gets longer and longer, and at higher levels, her sword is actually dual-edged. Her EX attack is a splash damage blast that you can flick all over the screen for great coverage. Her focus shot is just a basic shot, it's not very good. Kaho has ring-based weaponry that pierce through enemies before coming back to her. As she levels up, her attacks get more and more numerous and stronger. Her EX attack is a placeable flower that spreads as it kills enemies. And lastly, her focus shot focuses all of her rings into a straight line. Arya is a powerhouse, a slow character with options that lock to enemies that are also very strong. As she levels up, her shots and options get stronger and more numerous. Her EX attack spawns lollipops everywhere and is one of the best EX attacks in the game. Her focus shot makes her options point blank enemies and deal damage on contact. Sakuya is a very fast character, wielding dual drum mag things? Grenade launchers? I don't know. Her shot is a basic focus shot that gets wider and stronger as she levels up. Her EX attack is similar to Arya's, making it one of the best in the game. Her focus shot is missiles that give you knockback and deal decent damage. Chikage is basically playing Gawange. Her shot is a very weak amulet when tapped, and the Shikigami comes out when the button is held. As she levels up, she gets more amulets. Her EX attack is similar to Kaho's, and her focus shot increases the power of all of her attacks. Marie has her dog Michael as an option. On their own, they're both very weak, but together Michael actually acts like a shield, and blocks projectiles and can be moved alongside Marie, granting great defense. Her EX attack shoots the dog forward similar to Night Raid, and her focus shot shoots the dog forward in a blast. Rinrin has piercing missiles as her shot. These missiles get more numerous as she levels up, and eventually she'll get equipped with homing rockets. However, the sprite limit is pretty low, so she'll get pretty bad coverage. Her EX attack is a mech punch that is actually quite decent, and her focus shot is a spread mine that has good power. Hinako, wielding the P90 the size of her, is a spread shot. Behind her is a teddy bear that will follow her like a Gradius option. As she levels up, her spread shot gets better and better, and at certain levels she'll gain additional options up to about 9. Her EX attack drops the bears like a missile and is extremely strong. Similarly, her focus shot turns her spread shot into a focus shot that creates small stars upon hitting targets. These stars act as splash damage. Hinako is the best character in the game. Yotsuba is a wide spread shot with high move speed. As she levels up, she gets a wider spread. Tapping shot spawns a clover that will latch onto enemies and act as homing for your main shot. Her EX attack is like Marie's, and her focus shot is extremely strong at high levels. When clovers are latched onto enemies, the focus shot will spawn a laser that completely melts them, the strongest one in the game. So, these are the 10 main characters that you'll have unlocked. But there are 3 secret characters. Their unlock conditions will be covered later, but they are as follows. Jiiya, a maid with a massive minigun that acts like Raiden DX. Her shot is the red weapon with yellow missile. EX attack is the bomb. But it has a massive cooldown, and her focus shot is the blue weapon with yellow missile. This little robot, I don't know its name, so I'm calling it Baff. Baff is a simple straight shot that is very, very strong. His hitbox is really small and he's actually quite fast. When point blanking, he will shoot homing missiles onto targets. His EX attack is a lock-on that needs to have the button held in order to actually lock onto targets. It's an extremely strong EX attack, but it's a bit tough to use. His focus shot is a straight missile.
Finally is Mamimi, or Little Mimi as she's known on the streets. Her shot mirrors Darius Gaiden's shot progression, and her wave pierces through all terrain. Her EX attack is extremely strong, acting like Rayforce's lock-on mechanic, and when launched, it will do massive damage and clear out rooms easily. Her focus shot reminds me of, well, you see when you hold down the shot button, a beam, a laser one might say, comes out, and, where this mechanic comes from has been debated, and philosophers have argued over centuries about the origins of... it's from Dodonpachi, right? It reminds me of Dodonpachi. I'm sorry, but how else am I supposed to describe this? It's just like the shot from Dodonpachi. It's not my fault. Okay, relax.
So, Sispri has some extra meat on the bone that is deeper than what you might see playing through the game normally. You might have noticed on this whole map here that there are 3 special items: a locket, a bell, and a heart. These are hidden away in hard to reach areas in various stages of the game. Collecting all 3 before clearing the game will reward you with a second loop. When you enter Loop 2, the rank will have raised to such a point that every enemy will fire suicide bullets at you when killed. This includes also destructible shots. Large targets will fire more bullets at you, a la Donpachi. While you can reach the rank required for suicide bullets in Loop 1, there's only one path that you can take to allow the rank to reach this point. As you progress through Loop 2, the suicide bullets will fire faster and faster and hit harder, so you need to rush the final stages to get through safely. The last boss of Loop 2 is the same as Loop 1, but in a very enclosed space, which can be troublesome for a weak character. Something that you'll get when you get more familiar with the game is stage medals. When you clear a stage after earning a specific amount of level ups, you'll be rewarded with a medal, bronze, silver, or gold. These medals will grant initial level ups to extend sisters you collect. Every bronze will add 5, every silver adds 10, and every gold adds 15. Getting gold on some stages is extremely tough and a great way to improve with the game. Try to get gold on stage 1 for a real challenge. Now you remember those secret characters I mentioned before? Jiiya, Baff, and Mamimi? These characters are unlocked after you obtain a certain amount of stages gold medals. Every time you get a gold, it will get checked off in your game's save file. Jiiya will be unlocked after you obtain 5 gold medals, which is a pretty good starter goal to go for when you're learning the game. Baff unlocks at 10 gold medals, which is a very tough challenge to do, even for those familiar with the game. Mamimi unlocks at all 20 gold medals, a completely impossible challenge to do due to the absurd gold requirements of some stages. While it may be possible to gold these stages with co-op play, it's impossible to do it solo. I used save editing to unlock these characters. If you want to go this route, I'll include a guide in the description for you to follow. It's time to go over the bad stuff now. As it stands now, Sispri Gauntlet's development has been completed, and no further patches will be made for the game. After all, it's been 15 years since release, and the Group D5 has been disbanded or abandoned since then. But there are some major problems with the release of the game that plague what could honestly be a masterpiece. The first is the audio. There are 2 options in the game's settings, OGG and MIDI. You might think this is just a simple choice, right? Well, setting it to OGG can actually crash the game rarely after certain stages, forcing you to use MIDI. Now this isn't too bad though, as you can use a virtual MIDI synth to change how it sounds. I personally think the PC_YM2608.sf2 sound font sounds wonderful for the game, but maybe you can find sound fonts that fit it better. Next, a pretty big problem for some people. There is no standard practice mode in the game, and replays are a stage-by-stage basis. While you can take over a replay and play the stage, you can't set specific parameters to go through set stages with, and you cannot save replays of full runs. You gotta live record it for that. There's also no in-game scoreboard, so you need to keep track of your best scores yourself. However, another case of good game design, there's a debug mode that you can access which allows you to stage select, set your level, give all characters and invincibility. But sadly you can't give yourself maxed out power-ups or set max rank, so it's at least useful to learn stage layouts. Now is the worst problem. On the penultimate stage, this features a crash. This can happen by accident decently often if you're not careful about what you're doing. This bug happens specifically with these large robots. The first ones you encounter can have their laser options not fully despawn when killed, resulting them lingering for the duration of the stage. If too much shit happens at once, the game will crash. Characters like Yotsuba can also crash the game if there are too many lasers on screen here. Lastly is the top left room. These large robots create massive laser cannons. These laser cannons pierce the screen infinitely horizontally, and if you're lined up perfectly horizontally with these lasers, the game will crash 100% of the time. Thankfully, most of these crashes can be avoided, though if you're really unlucky, you'll get the laser option bug as it's entirely dependent on your kill timing, which can differ heavily run to run. But the large laser crash is routable to never happen at all. So to sum it up, you have to play with MIDI sound, There's no full run replays, no great stage practice, and you need to be careful in the final stage to avoid crashes. Just some blemishes on an otherwise wonderful game.